All right, we'll try to keep this one a little bit on the shorter side if we can, but there's a couple things I want to point out talking about midpoints. So I've already kind of written up here the basic formula, kind of the setup that you're going to have. They're going to give you 2 points. That's the idea. To find a midpoint, you have 2 points, and you're going to want to be able to figure out what the point that's halfway between them. It's in the name. It's the midpoints in the middle. Here we see in this statement that I put right in here in the middle is x1 plus x2 all over 2, and then y1 plus y2 all over 2. Those are just averages. I don't know how familiar or comfortable my audience will be with just the basic idea of an average, but an average is when you count up something and divide by the number of things you counted up by. So, for example, most students are familiar with averaging grades. If I have an 80 on one test and I have 100 on another test, well, if I add that together and divide by 2, I get 90, which is halfway between 80 and 100. Midpoints are literally just the average point of the other 2 points. You average their x's, you average their y's, and you're done. So for the example I have here, this is actually a very simple and fast process. I'm going to go in and we're going to do 2 plus 10 and divide that by 2. That's our x's. So our 2 and our 10, they're in the first position, so they're both x. We'll do the same with the y's. We'll do 4 plus the 16, divide that by 2, and then we're just about done. This is 12 over 2, which is 6, and then this over here is 20 over 2, which is 10. And so what I would do is say, well, okay, on a number line, for example, or not really a number line, but more of a coordinate plane, if I were to plot these 2 points and really take a look at that, well, 6 is halfway between 2 and 10. It's 4 away from both of them. 4 and 16, well, 4 is 6 less than 10, 16 is 6 more than 10. They're literally just the numbers in the middle. It just happens to be that there's 2 of them instead of just one number, like with the grade example. Other things that people often will kind of have some problems with that are kind of funny to me are when they give you points that are vertical. So for example, if I gave you a point at, let's say, 2, 5, and a point at 2, 15, I'll get some students who don't know what to do with that because they'll see that the 2's, well, when you do 2 plus 2, you get 4, and you divide by 2, you get 2 again, and it shouldn't be the same number. I want the number in between them. But if you have 2 and 2, then there is no in between them. You would just have a difference vertically. So 15 and 5, the middle of that would be 10, so your midpoint would just be at 210. Like that would be pretty straightforward. Same thing would work in like a horizontal way, except your y would stay the same and only your x would change. If for some reason you're looking at this though and you go, well look, midpoints, they're probably okay. I mean, that wasn't that bad, but I feel like I'll forget the formulas or I'll accidentally add the x's and the y's but instead of doing x and x. If there are little things like that that you're worried about, the other way that I like to approach a midpoint, and that I sometimes show people, so if you're comfortable with this at this point, feel free to pause the video and stop and just back out. But if you're looking at this and you're trying to think of another way to look at it, well, what you can do is just go, okay, well, look, we have these 2 points here. We have 2, 4, and we have 10, 16, and they are this far out. Well, think of it not really as a right triangle, although that's kind of what we're drawing here, but just think of it as a horizontal and a vertical piece. From 2 to 10 is a distance of 8, and from 4 up to 16, that's a distance of 12. So to go all the way from this point to this point, if we could think about it actually as sort of a crow flies versus a walk around the block, you could get to the same point up here by walking around the block. You could walk 8 to the right, you could walk 12 up, or north, or however you want to look at it, or you could just fly from this point all the way out to this point. Either way. If you think of it in terms of the 8 and the 12, though, that I've written down here, you can go in and say, okay, what if I only went half of that? Well, what if I went a distance of 4 instead of 8, and what if I went a distance of 6 instead of 12? That's really all there is to finding your midpoint. Now, this is not drawn to scale, so this is probably not actually halfway. But if I go from 2 and I go only 4 over, notice 2 plus 4 gives me 6. And if I'm starting at 4 and I move up 6, that's going to move me to 10, and there's that midpoint that we had earlier. This right here, I feel like, is a little bit of a time-consuming route to take in some cases. It's not really that bad. I mean, I actually could have done that work a lot faster if I had stopped running my mouth and if my camera had stopped freezing on me. But in general, I think that just knowing the formulas, understanding that these are just averages, it's very quick to get midpoints. Just add and divide by 2, add and divide by 2, and you're done. If you stayed this long in the video and you're wondering why I'm talking about this when I am in terms of my playlist that I've posted, we will probably want to know how to work with midpoints down the road because we're going to be taking a look at circles in more detail on the coordinate plane. And there are going to be times where we may know the endpoints of a diameter and want to know the center of the circle. So turns out the center of the circle is the midpoint of the endpoints of a diameter.